and welcome to this series of conversations where, as you know, we speak to women achievers who we call women trailblazers. We want them to share the stories of their lives with us, to tell us about their journeys, struggles, challenges, successes, failures, all of that, so that other women get inspired and, move forward to realize their potential. And eventually, of course, we want to build a community of women who are there to support, empower, and motivate each other. So thank you for being here, being on the show, and a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure. And I feel very honored. And yeah, let's hope we can inspire some people from our listeners.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So just to get the ball rolling, just tell us a little bit about your early life, your childhood.
Mm-hmm. So I was born in the former GDR. So I'm originally from East Germany. So I grew up until I was 9 years old and in the communist government setup. Actually, only until I was 4 years old because we moved to Egypt. My father was an Arabic translator. So he had duties in Cairo in Egypt in the capital. And we moved there, which was an interesting experience. I would say I had a very, very protected childhood. Because given that we were in a capitalist country, we were quite secluded amongst ourselves within the embassy people. So very harmonic. I've got 2 parents, 1 sister, and a lot of things happened around the school. It was a full day school. We had huge amount of space to exercise, to do some art, to do some crafts. So very secluded, yet very, very harmonic. No additional challenges, I would say.
Okay. So if you look back, any memory from your childhood which you think has made you the person you are today?
I think a little bit. I think the whole cultural aspect, which has become like, within me early on, definitely started growing already when we moved to Egypt, because I was surrounded by different culture, different food, different experience, different languages at that time. So I lived there in the early 80s. So at that time, it wasn't, like the tourist spot that it became later on. So I do remember, we went through the bazaars and people were constantly touching my head and my hair, because it was still very, very unusual to see a white person with blonde hair and, you're 4 or 5 years old. So, you're little, you're cute, and the hair and everything. Yeah. So no, I think especially, like the intercultural aspect, that certainly got triggered in my childhood, I would say, because that really opened a whole new world for me, which I very much enjoyed and very much appreciated. And since then, been a constant. If it was job search, international companies, moving abroad, living abroad, I think it all started very early on there, that I was attracted to that.
Okay. So tell me, what made you take the career path that you did? How did you decide to choose this particular path and not something else?
Yeah. Well, I've actually did a transformation for myself. So I'll go little bit back. So I've got a bachelor degree in a Bachelor of Arts. However, I always used to work on the side. And so I come from a sports point of view in athletics. And I started working there during my university time in the summer camp. And then at 2005, that was, Germany was holding the FIFA Men's World Cup in 2006 in Germany. So the agency that I worked with during the summer then reached out to me after I finished. And so I never really had a concrete career goal. It was really like, oh, that is a great opportunity. So let me start getting into the work market. From there on, I actually moved to Geneva through that, because then I got approached by UEFA, who was hosting the 2008 European Championships. And from then I moved up to Zurich, to FIFA, to the World Football Governance Body. And it was always very, very interesting and international and global opportunities, which was extremely energetic and insightful. And kind of by accident, I ended up in the event part of it, in the guest management sponsorship protocol part of it, which, however, also quite early on, I realized was not what I was wanting to do for the rest of my career, because it wasn't, and that's only for me, I know everyone is personal, but for me, it wasn't substantial enough. Okay. It wasn't like, what is a footprint that I would like to leave? What is the meaning of what I'm doing 8 to 12 hours each day? So I was already starting to look, how could I transform that? Because obviously it was very, you're coming from a very commercial side, trying to go more into the social angle. And at least at that time, it wasn't very straightforward to do these big transformations. I think with COVID now in the last years, things have eased up. I think people got more confident. People are trying more things. People are realizing you have to take a calculated risk because you don't know what's going to come anyway. I don't think any of us were expecting the last 3.5 years to be as they were. And I think people have realized that. But at that time, it wasn't very common. And so, it was really a slow transition into the diversity, equity, and inclusion angle, which I think within me was already for 15 years, but then, children, stability, pay the bills, how much risk are you willing to take? Also, how much extra work you're wanting to put in, because I think such a transformation from going quite commercial to the area that I'm working in now, that wasn't an overnight. That took a lot of time, a lot of energy, also a lot of rejection, I think, or let's call it redirection. But I think, so that really was my beginning of the career wasn't very, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just kind of ended up being in great organizations with exciting projects. And then, let's say, as of my early 30s, I would say I kind of started to focus more and understand more, what do I want to do and what do I not want to do? And it took me until my late 30s to really start shaping that and start building that on the side. And I've only done the full, let's say, transition end of 21.
Okay.
So it takes time. I think, when they always say consistency, energy, I don't think anything is an overnight success. But I also believe that once if you found your meaning, if you found your purpose, I can only encourage everyone to try to go for it as much as possible, because I think the reward for your personal well-being and also for society is huge.
I agree. It does take us a while many times to figure out what we want, because I think when we start out in lives, we're not sure. We just maybe following things or wanting to do things because other people are doing it. We don't really understand. And I think it's only with more and more exposure, more and more awareness that we realize that, okay, this is not what I want to do. This is something else.
Yeah.
So
No, I agree. I think, early 20s, we're babies, huh? We're babies. We're kind of like, there's a lot of opportunities. I think for the next generation, it's more interesting, yet also more challenging, because there's almost too many opportunities now, because the world has become so small and everything seems possible, that I think it can be really overwhelming. And what I would like to add to what you just said, I absolutely agree. And I also think it can change per life phase. I think things that are now more meaningful and important to me now have certainly shifted throughout my different life phases.
Yeah. I think that happens with time and age. So Karen, of course, as you started out as a young girl, and then, you studied, and then, of course, you got into sports, and then now you've changed. So some of the challenges that you may have faced as an individual and as a woman, both.
Well, I was, so in the sport industry, or let's say in the football industry, it is very male dominated. I have to say that at least in my memory, I have never obviously felt that there was a disadvantage in regards to my gender in comparison to my peers. However, I also believe that depended on the area that I was working in, because I wasn't working in IT, or let's say even male-dominated areas, but I was working in the event sponsorship and guest management, so the hospitality area, which is usually more female still than male to this point. So I kind of wonder if it was because of that, but really I've never had anything. I think the first experience for me as a woman was when I became a mother. And this I certainly underestimated. While I think I was quite aware of that it wouldn't be how it was before, I was not prepared to be completely inexistent and completely erased of all my qualities just by giving birth and returning after 6 months back to work, which is what my personal experience was in both of my motherhood returns. And I knew it needed adjustments from both sides. I knew it needed flexibility. I knew that there is differences, but to the extent that I experienced it, I was surprised. Because also I didn't have children, 20 years ago. I had them in 2016 and 2018. And by that time, I had worked somewhere between 15 to 18 years. So, I knew what I was doing. I had a reputation. I was well integrated, well respected up until the CEO. So that really did, to that extent, it came to me as a surprise. I think individually, yes, as you can maybe tell a little bit, I'm quite energetic and also quite passionate about things that I believe in.
Yes.
And I'm a great believer of justice, which doesn't happen throughout all the experience in our professional or private life. I do speak up. So that certainly from an individual point of view, I'm sure has caused some challenges throughout my career, because even though also now culturally it changes a little bit, so you're supposed to be allowed to make mistakes and to speak up and to bring your opinion, reality, depending on the organization and industry you're in, is still very different.
It is.
Depending on the leadership that you're experiencing. And my experience usually was that while it was in theory welcomed, it really wasn't too much in practice.
Yes, I think like I spoke to one of my guests the other day, and she said it's very good to know a woman, talk to a woman over coffee, a woman who's strong and opinionated.
Yeah.
You talk to her over a cup of coffee, but if she comes to your home, then it is like, okay, now what do I do with her? Because you can't deal with that all the time. And I think the society still needs time to, get accustomed to that if I have an opinion, I will have an opinion everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's, as you said, it's, it's not a pick or choose. It shouldn't be.
Yes, absolutely. So Karen, of course, you're a mom, you're a working woman, and of course you have your other, you have your family, and then you have your life, your social life, all of that. How do you balance different parts of your life, which I think women have to do more than men?
Yes, I think first of all, I agree on that. I think it is more different areas. I think we're much wider spread, which I'm always very surprised of the numbers in leadership positions, because we've got so many added skills because of the management of our daily lives that are not really reflected in the numbers, which I find surprising, because I think if you can juggle it all, as a majority of us can, throughout these different phases, we would be prepared quite well for certain positions. But I think that's a different conversation. No, but for me, I mean, to be honest, to be very honest, I don't think I've done a very good job in the last 3 years, given, the whole transformation. I do a lot of work in the evenings, on my own, when the little ones are in bed. And also, I'm a great believer of what the late Ruth Garner Bensberg said. You can have it all, but you can't have it all at the same time. So I've also tried to take some time for myself about every 6 months to readjust my priorities, to understand where the time goes. Does it serve me? Does it do me well? Is it a permanent challenge in a negative way? Does it give me negative energy? And then also, what is changeable and what is not changeable. So I've made a very conscious decision that the majority of my time at the moment is spent between the work that I do, which I'm fortunate enough for it not to be considered work, because, that's also, if I have time in the evenings to read, I read about these topics. It's really like, I think it's the idea where it's the work-life integration.
Yes.
And I'm very fortunate that I have found that. So, but yes, it's really between work and my immediate family, where at the moment that has a much stronger focus than, 10 years ago. It was a lot about exercising, trying out new foods, going into restaurants. So I think there is adjustments to be done, and I don't think we can have it all at the same time. But yes, that's kind of how I'm dealing with it. And it works well for me and my immediate social and work circle. But I think that's very individual.
Yes, but it is right. I think it's important to know when to do what and then do that. I may be having a list of things to do, but as of now, what is important, I focus on that. I prioritize on that, and then I move on to the next thing. I guess all of us, we've mastered the art. We have to do.
Exactly. And I think, there's also some great methods, and not everything, there's not one fits all. But I
Yes.
think if you are, first of all, if you're aware of it and then you try different methods that work for you, like for example, I always prepare in the evening 10 minutes for the next day.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
first three things are my must-dos, and then I have maybes, and then I have some, if I get to it, fine, but if not, and I also, work on not allowing it to stress me. But you're really like, okay, it's not an issue if 5 points move 10 times, if they're not on the prioritization. So I think there's different methods, and I think that's time well spent and invested to find the one that is working for oneself, rather than I'm torn apart between a caring responsibility, a working responsibility, being a wife, being in shape, being healthy, eating well. I mean, there's so many things that, also now with especially the social media, we're kind of like, okay, so this all we all need to integrate it into our
Yeah.
dailies, and I
Yeah.
think that just doesn't work.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Okay, so Karen, if you were to look back on your life, what do you think has been
Mhm.
your biggest success so far? I mean, this is not only professional, it could be personal, it could be anything,
Yeah.
something which you want to talk about.
Yeah. I mean, success probably is not the right word, but I am forever grateful for my children.
Okay.
Also, having had a cancer diagnosis in 2011, it wasn't clear if I would ever be able to have some.
Mhm.
So for me, it was, I know we always say it's a miracle, but for me, I think I was actually one of the people who really understood the message of it being a miracle, because also through both pregnancies, I had severe complications. So I feel forever grateful that my body allowed me to have two healthy boys. So I think that is, I don't know if it's a success, but it's like, the gratitude. I'm very grateful, and I'm very understanding deep inside. And if they turn out to be good people in the sense that I define good people, which I know everyone defines differently, then I think that would be my future success. So that is a lot of things that I'm doing with them, and that we are prioritizing and focusing on from an early childhood on, in order to make sure, they understand the privilege, the differences. So I'm married to a Cameroonian-French. So our kids are biracial. So, they already grow up in a different, I just want them to understand the different cultures. What does it mean? What does it mean to be born for them in Switzerland in comparison to be born somewhere else? So we're starting, with storytelling, with reading, with, how to handle your money. What's the difference between the genders? All of these things we're already starting in a very playful way to integrate. So if I manage to have them as that,
Yes.
that would be a success. And I think professionally, I mean, I'm not a very proud person in these regards. I think I've got a lot of achievements throughout my professional career that I've probably never celebrated or appreciated to what they were and what I did achieve. But if I would have to say, from a success point of view, really intentionally, it is a transformation from the two areas of expertise, and now being able to combine them, and really having found what I would like to move forward.
Excellent. I think that's
Yes.
a great point, to be able to move and then combine, synergize
Yeah.
what you
Yeah.
had done. I think that is a great thing. Not everybody can do it.
Yeah.
Sometimes just make a shift and then you don't know what to do with what you had learned from your earlier
Yeah.
experience. But
Yeah.
yes, to be able
Yeah.
to do that is, yes.
Exactly, because I think, it's part of our story, part of our life, and also our professional experience. And I think it's great if you can integrate that within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on a day-to-day basis, how do you keep yourself inspired, motivated to be on the go? I mean, there are days when we are like, down and out and don't want to do
Yeah.
anything. So how do you
Yeah.
deal with those moments or those days?
Well, I'm privileged or not privileged, depending on how you say it. So I've got very energetic boys. They're only 4 and 6. So they kind of rule it. So even if I have a day when I'm, like really tired, and it's like today would be a good day to stay in bed, to turn around one more, to have a coffee, or to read something, or not do anything. The kids obviously have a different agenda and a different plan. So it does sometimes in the morning take a bit longer, but I always come, because I also have really positive energy. which I'm super grateful for, because that, even if you have the day where you like, as I said earlier on, you've just had 5 declines on a project that you've pitched, and then the next morning you're like, okay, I have to do it again and again. They're super helpful for me. They distract me, they come with their positive energy. It takes a bit longer, but then we're usually quite good to go. So that regards, for me, they're really a huge support in that
Sure.
regards, to also to remotivate, because I know what I'm doing it for, I know who I'm doing it for. And generally speaking, I'm quite fortunate that because of what I'm doing, and because also what we're reading in the media of the numbers, if we look at the latest report from the World Economics Forum saying that gender equality is still 132 years out, these things also support me in my daily work and my daily motivation. Because there is just so much to do. There's so many opportunities for the systematic change that I do feel daily inspiration to try something, to move something, to network, to give workshops inside the work that I do, even if it's just a small achievement and a small movement. I know that 1%, there's a Tanzanian proverb which I like to use: little by little, little becomes a lot.
Yes, excellent. Little by little, little becomes a lot. Yes.
Exactly. And that's something that I really believe in. So for me, these are probably the 2 things that are helping me on a day where things are a bit slower and a bit darker than on other days.
Great, great. Yes, and you may be a drop in the ocean, but it's ultimately, every drop counts.
Yeah. And I think, the trigger effect that we can have, because if I'm one drop and I can reach so many people, and then all of a sudden we are half an ocean.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. For me, that is really, I really believe in that. And I also, I don't have high expectations in regards to, I want to reach 1 million and I want to read, this is not. But if we would all be able to reach 10, 20, 100 people, we've reached 10, 20, 100 people. If they go home with something more than they came with, and they might share it to the next person, I think we're underestimating what a single person can do. Yes, I agree, being in a leadership position, being in a political mandate, depending on the amount of reach and also resources you have, you can have stronger impacts, but yet I still believe we all can have one as well.
I agree. So 10 years from now, what do you see yourself doing?
Ooh, good one. I have no idea. I'm not that far. I'm still in the middle of everything. Ideally, because we haven't started that one yet with the children, I would like to start traveling more long distance with them. In order to really also, get to know more cultures, have different experiences, because at the moment we're not. I mean, first of all, given COVID, but also in general Europe. And we don't want to overextend it because of the sustainability point of view. So we don't want to be like world global travelers. But this is something that I think the older they get, the more we can handle, hopefully, the time change. That is something that I would love to do, and that I would love to experience with them before they leave the house and then they start doing the things on their own. So I think that's definitely something that I'm working towards, to also to have that financial buffer to be able to do these travels and create these memories and have these experiences with them. Not in 10 years, but maybe in 15 or 20, I would love to pick up more volunteer work and go less from the income side, because I think there's so many fantastic organizations that could do additional supports, but giving my certain current phase in life, it just doesn't work in regards to sustain your life.
Yes,
and also, to build a certain security and stability for your family, or for an unforeseen emergency. So that is something that I would like to do, but probably a bit later on. And have more, like, see the numbers and the statistics of the inequality changing. I think that would be something that I would love to see within the next 10 years. And I think we can do it.
Of course we can, definitely. Okay, some of the learnings of your life, some of the lessons that you may have learned and which you would like to share with us?
I think one thing I mentioned already is gratitude.
Yes.
I think it's very underestimated. because we tend to look into the things that we don't have rather into all the things that we have.
Absolutely.
So I think that is something that I've become more aware of, let's say, within the last decades. I also think that, you know, I think what I've realized, not too late, but later on in life, and if I would have to do it again, I would like to realize it earlier in life, really ensuring that you understand that you're the driver, you're in the driver's seat of your life. Because if you're not taking control of your life, someone else will.
Absolutely.
If it is a partner, if it is an employer. And I think this takes time. It needs time. I think, you know, a lot of times we rush through life. If I look at my 20s, I was everywhere, all over the place. And I never had the time or would purposely take the time to have a think, you know, what do I want to do? I knew what I didn't want. And again, it took 2 decades to develop this. But I think this is, you know, like, take the time and understand that you are in control and in the driver's seat. And then I also think, you know, be aware of your privileges and always give back.
Yes.
I think that's also something that I think, because it makes, you know, like the couple of volunteer positions that I'm holding at the moment, they give me so much, because it's usually smaller organizations. It's usually where you really can make a change quite firsthand and you see it. You know, it's just very, very, very little things. And it's something that if I reflect on a week, it's something that most stick to me.
Okay. All right.
Yes. And I think also something that I would do earlier if I would have to do it again, which I think is crucial, especially for our gender, but for everyone, is learn and develop yourself. There's a huge amount of opportunities, even free opportunities out now that wasn't available, you know, I think earlier on. Now on YouTube, Coursera, there's so many different platforms where you can, if you want to, find good content to develop and learn in a specific area of interest, once you know what interests you. And one of the main things out of that, which I think should be more taught in school, but if not, that we really should be in self-education, is be financial literate.
Yes.
Because I think that
very
changes.
Important.
Yeah, and I think it changes almost everything if you are or if you aren't.
Yeah, that makes
also again, you know, to be more in the driver's seat of choices.
Absolutely.
I think it just connects almost everything.
I agree. I completely agree with that. Okay. So the world today, so as a successful woman, how do people react to her? I mean, it's not only the other gender, but even women. So you've done well for yourself. You've made a name for yourself. How do people look at you?
I'm quite fortunate. I'm quite fortunate that I'm, again, intentionally aware of my network and the people that I surround myself with, and I try to stay away from the toxic ones.
Great.
I know there are, I've experienced them. Interestingly enough, at least within my small bubble, it was usually the ones in the leadership positions that were more harsh and more toxic than the peers. But again, I think, yeah, for me, and like, let's say in where I can influence it, I don't surround myself with negative women or women that, you know, like cannot celebrate my success. I do surround myself with people that celebrate, and, you know, like, even if it's just something little, but, you know, they're proud of me, they support me, they advise me. So that's working out quite well for me. In general, I know that it's still a big topic. I think women towards each other, which is one of the main challenges, are not the most supportive. A lot of people that I have in different conversations say that even their male mentors or sponsors, their male peers also within their networks, are more supportive and more understanding.
But do the males accept successful women the way they would accept a successful man? Say in formal gatherings you meet, you think they treat successful men and women in the same way, or is there something that you got lucky or something like that?
I think yes and no. I think I wouldn't want to stereotype it. I think at least, you know, again, within my small bubble, within Switzerland, I think I've come across both.
Okay.
There's still a huge amount of successful men that stay amongst themselves. They have their members clubs, they have their golf courts, they've got their certain amount of groups. But then there's also that other group that is purposely opening the doors. Do they treat them the same way? I don't know, but they're intentionally making an effort to change the system.
Okay. That's, I think, good to go, because at least you started on the right track. And then, of course, you pick up things as you go along.
Yeah.
All right. So, Karen, another question that, a lot of people nowadays, when they come to their, you've done that too, mid-40s, early 40s or 50s, they switch gears. They start doing different things that they were not doing when they were young. So could you just kind of throw light on what you think are the reasons why they're doing that?
I wonder if it is part of just, like the life phase, because 40 is you've kind of built your first and second phase. You've got your education, you've got your work experience, you've taken your decision on family or not family, traveling, you've got probably 1, 2, 3 promotions already. And I think there is a time when where the thought process starts, where like, is this what I want to do until I retire?
Yeah.
So in Switzerland, for example, at the moment, we've got the retirement age of 65. So usually when you've done your degrees, by the age of 40, you've already worked 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And I think this is it's kind of like the half term of your professional career. And I wonder if that has something to do with it, where people then are, okay, can I develop in this area? Because that's still the number one factor why people losing their jobs. Even before having a bad leader, because if there's no growth and no development, 25 years is a really long time. And now also taken into consideration that due to our environment, we're about living on average about 10 years longer than we did in the 60s. It also is like there's so much more that I think people are also looking into this more for themselves, and it's kind of midterm, so you're wondering. And I think the people that are wondering maybe haven't found it yet, or maybe also decided something, like we said earlier on, very early in life, in their 20s, because it was the right thing to do, or they got into something, and now they have life experience, they've got professional experience, and maybe also some of their mindsets have changed. And I think that all these things play together.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think by then you are mature, and maybe there is, of course, some bit of financial stability also. You don't have to really run after money. You have a certain amount of that. So you can kind of start looking at things which, you could be passionate about or interested. And of course, with so much of social media and so much of exposure, you do have, inspiration all around you. You see other people doing it, and somewhere you feel that I can also do it. So yeah.
And I think also, the human side came out also through social media in the last 5 to 10 years a lot more. Like now one of the main leadership skills to have is empathy. That wasn't even in the top 10, 15 years ago. And like happiness. I think there's a lot of things around that also triggers people to think about, okay, never thought if I wanted to be happy. Am I happy? Am I not? Can I change it? And I just think this does start having some thought process. It will be an interesting time to come, because I think also obviously social media, also now with the artificial intelligence coming in, I find it interesting. I'm also limiting it for myself though, because I think otherwise I'm completely overconsumed. But I'm also sometimes wondering, the quantity versus the quality. Yeah, let's see, because I think a lot of it is also, like staged to a certain extent, that then for the real people like us, it can work out, but it can also be a lot higher risk and bring you into a situation that you were not prepared for. So I think everything is it's important to be still cautious. And I think it's important to do your personal homework on all these different things before you're starting to move.
Okay, so Karen, any piece of advice for young girls today who are just starting out in their lives, professional, personal, they're on the threshold, what would you like to tell them?
Know yourself, I think, is experience.
Yeah.
I think, we're putting a lot of pressure on the next generation as well. They're supposed to save the planet. They're supposed to care for us because we're going to be all much older, while the numbers in the babies are going down. No, I think, or get to know yourself, I should probably say, rather than know yourself, because that will take a long time. But, experience. I think, don't have the pressure of being anything that you see virtually. Don't have the pressure of knowing exactly what you need to study or which apprenticeship you need to take at a very young age. Try yourself out. Try to understand, what do I like, what do I not like, so that you can really pass the way into that regards. And I think, as I said earlier on, be a good person, also from a human point of view. I think a lot of it is going to be, technology. We're already able to fly to space. Who knows what's going to come? I think it's a very fast-paced world.
Yes.
So I think you need human touch. I think you need the human contacts. And I think these things is something that I would really, not only for that generation, but just make sure you're not getting too absorbed into an artificial virtual world that has nothing to do with reality.
Correct.
Because you'll miss out on the nice things. You'll miss out, on the interactions, on the nature, on so many things that really, the touch and the feel. I think a lot of things really important for your personal well-being. And I think if we can focus on that, that'd be great.
That's great. And also for girls and for women, even I think things like financial and emotional independence, I think that also is very, very critical, because girls still somewhere in some parts of the world have the option to not be financially independent. I think somewhere that should no longer be an option.
Yeah.
Because
Ideally,
the more
yes,
independent you are,
yeah,
the more in charge. You are in the driver's seat, as you said. It's you who should be taking the decisions of your life and not others. So I think all across, this should also be, I think, one of the things that girls should keep in mind. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think we really can start with the education system, as well as, with the parenting, because I seen a study recently that already with pocket money, there's a difference and disadvantage being a female to a male.
Okay. All right.
So these things, we have to start much earlier.
Yes.
Having these conversations, understanding them, and integrate them, in the different stages in life.
Yes. And I think if you start young, then those things kind of get embedded, and children really don't have to make an effort, or we don't have to make an effort to explain anything to them later on. Okay.
Yeah, I think so as well. And if you teach them early on, there's not always a right or wrong. It's not, try to take your own picture, take the different perspectives into consideration, the different backgrounds. I think there's a lot of things that we can, just by doing it, not necessarily even teaching or showing, but just by doing it, we're setting an example.
Yes, I agree. Because children don't only learn what you teach, but they also imbibe what they observe. So a lot of times we don't think we are teaching them, but we are, by the way we behave. Yeah.
I think so. I don't know if you know that Switzerland, for example, is the part-time world champion. So there's no other country in the world that has more and minimum part-time workers, which is 90% female and 10% male, than Switzerland. So already by that, you're teaching your children something. And I'm not saying what's right or wrong. This is not, I think everyone has to decide them and for their system and their family set up for themselves. But I think it does all these things influence.
Yes, of course. This is what you're learning. Yeah.
Because, for example, if you've been working all your life, your boys grew up like this.
Yes.
And they knew that they had two working parents, or they knew that they were having a stay-at-home mom, or whatever the setup is. And I think these things are all already part of what we're teaching. I think we just need to be mindful of that when we're taking our decisions.
I agree. So, Karen, you pretty much answered this question that a woman is a woman's worst enemy, can be. But
yes.
I also have a theory. I feel that, even a man can be a man's enemy. But it's just that we don't talk so much about it, because somehow this has become, it's a myth that was created, I think, somewhere to control women. Because, like in every situation, jealousy, envy, is a natural human emotion. Men can have it, women can have it. So
Mhm.
why, blame women more than the men for that? That is my question. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think I have the answer to that. So just to start off with, I do think what you said makes sense to me to a certain extent, that once the word got out, people were much more focusing on women, like backstabbing each other or calling each other out than men. However, I also have the feeling that in regards to the relationships already very early on, if I when I saw my niece and nephew growing up in their teenage years and now in universities, the majority, and they're a boy and a girl, so they're twins and they're a boy and a girl, and it just seems to be a different vibe and a different way of being with each other if they are amongst, and I'm being stereotypical here, there's always exceptions, as we know, but to be amongst guys. And I think, for example, for my niece, that was super challenging because she is not the typical woman in that regard. So she always felt much more comfortable with the guys because it was more on a like casual, the way that they were interacting was different and more accommodating to her than it was amongst the females. And I wonder if that then just accelerates the older we get. I do think that to a certain extent it was created to point it out and be more aware, because if you hear something 200 times from that gender and only one time from the other gender, we all humans, we automatically focus on that side. So I'm not even sure if it is that strong to that amount as it is being portrayed to the outside world. Yeah. Did I answer all your questions or did I miss something?
You've
Good. Okay.
well.
Yes. So that's a little bit what I'm seeing. But no, I also have to admit, just to finish that thought, at least within, and obviously if I'm working in diversity, equity, and inclusion, I hope there's very, very little competition because we're all working on the same goal. But considering that the networks and, the workshops, the webinars, the meets that I have with the people, which are unfortunately mainly female, working in that area of expertise, at least within Switzerland, there is no real competition. So I also think, it really also depends on which area you work. I think there's other areas which would give you very, very different answers. But I can also say from a positive point of view, I have the feeling we're more aware and there's more and more women who are celebrating successes for other women, supporting them with the achievements. And I think, what you're doing is part of it. Because, you're giving people a platform to speak, you're giving people a platform to listen, to understand what it can do and what it means to be supportive, to learn from each other, to celebrate the achievements.
Okay, so another question, I have the answer, but just to put it across, can a woman have it all?
No. As I said before, yes, but not all at the same time.
Not all, yes.
Exactly.
And I think, if I may add, it is also very important to know what your all is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what is...
Yeah, it's very individual.
Yes, my all could be different from yours. And just because I have it doesn't mean you have it. And like you said, it's not like you can't have it all at once. But yes, say tomorrow when I'm 75 or 80 and I'm still alive and kicking, if I look back, then I can say, yes, I did have it all.
So in different phases. Yes, exactly.
So I think
I agree. And to be honest, I think that's the beauty of us. My all is different to your all. My wants and needs are different to your wants and needs. And I think that makes it fun. That makes all the communication and the exchange and the inspirations. If we'd all be similar and, our all would all be the same, it'd be very boring.
Very boring indeed, very boring. So we have to add that spice to life, that variety to life by having different alls, and talk about the alls. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, because there's still so much stigma, especially again around the female, a lot of times it's still being considered incomplete if you decided for yourself that you didn't want to have children. And all these things, again, as we said, our all is different and we need to be mindful and respectful of what we consider our all does not have to be the one for others.
Absolutely. I agree. So thank you so much, Karen. It was wonderful having you on the show and listening to you and your views. Of course, coming from a different culture, different perspective, but what I gathered was that at the core, we all women are the same. We may have different experiences, we may experience different things at different times, but by and large, our beliefs are the same. You agree?
Yes, I agree. I think our life cycles, I think, as you said, our framework might be very different in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of upbringing, climate, all these different things. But I think our life cycle is quite similar.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah.
Thank you for having me, and have a lovely afternoon, and wishing you all the best.
Thank
Love
you
what you're
so much.
doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.